I think that broad outline is important. It's important that you provide it to our members of the Public Protection Budget Subcommittee, especially Senator Gallivan as chair of the Crime and Corrections Committee. And I'm not going to ask you any more questions about those issues. That's, I think, certainly what I'm confident Senator Gallivan wants to pursue. There is one area that I'd like to ask you about, and that's the employee Joyce Mitchell. Obviously, you're familiar with who that is. One of the linchpins in the ability for the prisoners to escape. Do you know what her title was?
I think it was industrial training specialist, something along those lines.
It's my understanding that something to that effect, industrial training, in the prison tailor shop, as a prison tailor shop instructor. Her salary, we looked it up, is $57,697 a year. Did Joyce Mitchell have any advisory capacity to the Department of Corrections in any way, any management or reporting beyond the management within the correctional facility?
Senator, before I go any further, I cannot comment on anything that is the subject of a pending investigation.
The Inspector General, I know Senator Gallivan has asked a number of these questions, and we've gotten the same answer so far, Commissioner. Do you have any idea how long that investigation will take and when a report will be issued?
I cannot answer that.
Here's Mike. I guess let me just ask you then, not about Joyce Mitchell, but about your other industrial training supervisors across the correctional system. Do any of your industrial training supervisors have policy-making responsibilities within the Department of Corrections?
I have met with my industrial training superintendents. The core craft industry aspect of our operations is very important. Inmates are meaningfully employed. They learn a skill. They provide an important service for our customers throughout the state, and I'm hopeful of continuing that and upgrading it in many ways. They can occasionally sit in on executive staff meetings at the facility level because everybody is important, and they certainly should listen to all the security concerns and other cross-disciplinary issues. But I don't think they have formal policy roles as you would define it, if I understand your question correctly. But they certainly, every one of my staff, and I hammer this to the superintendents, your primary responsibility, among other things, is you have to know your jail. You have to walk and talk with everybody. Every employee is important in this agency. Everyone might have possible suggestions for you as to how to better improve operations for everybody's safety and security. So that is fundamental to me, that they have to make those kinds of rounds regularly.
And that's exemplary. I know you've always listened to us. We're hopeful that you continue to listen to all the correctional employees with their suggestions and their input. But I guess in the hypothetical, it's safe to say that normally the industrial training supervisor doesn't have policy-making responsibilities within the correctional system. Is that safe to say?
I believe that's safe to say.
And yet potentially, if an industrial training supervisor was involved, again, in the hypothetical, directly involved with criminality regarding a prison escape, which cost the taxpayers of this state at least $12 million from the Department of Corrections, and our estimates are another $11 to $13 million for the Department of State Police, as well as other federal costs to the FBI. That one industrial training supervisor could have cost the taxpayers of this state at least $25 million. And that employee of the state of New York and the taxpayers of the state has had absolutely no policy implications or extremely limited policy implications within within their position of responsibility. I think that's the point that glares to me, Commissioner, that the impact of wrongdoing within state employment, the tax entrusted to the taxpayers through state employment, can have enormous financial implications. Not to mention the havoc that it created within your department in trying to deal with these issues, and that you're going to continue to deal with these issues. I know Senator Gallivan is awaiting the Inspector General's report. Certainly other members of the Corrections Committee as well as the Codes Committee are waiting for that report, and we hope that we'll have the opportunity to sit down with you as you continue to make improvements in the correctional system on a day-to-day basis. So thank you for your dialogue, and I appreciate the important responsibilities that you have.
Thank you, Senator, especially for all your years of service to our agency. We will miss you.
Thank you, Commissioner.
Assembly.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Assemblymember O'Donnell.
Good afternoon. It's very nice to see you again.
Good afternoon.
I was watching TV last night. I got to watch Mr. Sweat's sentencing time, and he was sentenced to $80,000 of restitution, which I thought was an odd number given the number you just gave us, $12 million. And of course, when you pay your inmates $1.25 an hour, I don't think you're going to get back that $80,000 anytime soon. But I also assume you don't have a budget line for escapes, right? So where did the $12 million come from?
Division of the budget provided the money for us.
So did you call somebody up and say we need $12 million for overtime? Is that
They found a funding source for us.
Yeah, they're very good like that. Funny how that is. Let me talk about this new Office of Special Investigations, which used to be the Inspector General's office. Is that correct?
Yes.
You know, the other day I went out and bought some new jeans, and they are called skinny jeans, but that doesn't mean I'm skinny. You know what I mean? So I wonder if by changing the name from one entity to another is enough to effectuate real change. I just heard you answer some of the Senator's questions. I don't want you to divulge anything you know about the Inspector General and when and if her report will be coming out, nor about what it says. But internally, your own Inspector General's office had a report against Ms. Mitchell that they found lacking in veracity or whatever you want to say, and dismissed that. Isn't that of great concern to you, that the entity that is in charge investigating internally ignored the fact that this inappropriate relationship was going on? I mean, I'm not suggesting that you would have guessed that would have led to a $12 million overtime charge for an escape, but doesn't that give you concern?
I cannot comment on something that's the subject of a pending investigation.
So then let's talk about the budget. You have 125 investigators. Can you tell me what is the budget of the Office of Special Investigation?
I can get that information for you. I don't know the exact amount.
We did a hearing last year, end of last year, where you unfortunately couldn't come. We missed you, Tony. And to look at the question of how do other places in the country and in the world deal with this problem, right? So we have this very high-profile escape, cost us possibly up to $25 million. People's lives were upended, and it seemingly, the mechanisms that you had to provide oversight within your system failed. And what we learned was that in something like 42 other states, they have a separate office of an ombudsman. In Canada, in England, and in Wales, they all have an own outside agency specifically for the purpose of conducting investigations inside the prison system. What do you think of that?
Well, Assemblyman, we have a lot of outside entities that have access to our prisons right now. The State Commission of Correction can visit at will. Any member of the legislature can visit at will, together with any number of their aides. We've entertained requests where aides can come by themselves. Any district attorney can visit. We have outside entities like PAMI that come and do investigations with respect to their clients. We have the Justice Center that comes in. The Justice Department can come in, and U.S. attorneys in connection with any pending investigation. We know the Correctional Association comes in, they do their site visits, they come in with as many as 8 to 12 people. We accord them privileged correspondence rights so that any inmate that writes to them, it goes out sealed, it comes in sealed, it's not read by staff. So there are a lot of entities now that presently have access. I'd like to, for a moment, talk briefly about how we have reformulated significantly our OSI office. First, there's an attorney at the top now. That wasn't the case. He has an extensive law enforcement background. He brought in another attorney with an extensive law enforcement background. They have since made significant efforts to link with the U.S. attorneys, with the FBI, with all local district attorneys. They bring cases to them. They've also brought in many other outside investigators. So we have new energy from the outside, but mixing in with experienced people. You have to understand how jails operate in order to conduct a proper investigation. They have changed how they process cases. They have a new initiative where they're going to do an analysis of an entire facility, and they're going to speak to every employee and get feedback from inmates so that we can get better results on our investigations. There's a lot of things that they are doing that I am very hopeful about, including now they directly report to me, and I meet with them regularly to go over where they're going. So I think we are moving in the right direction in this area.
Well, I appreciate your point of view. I just want to share with you that we're the outlier here in New York in how we do this. Those left-wing places like Indiana do it differently, and we had great information and testimony that was provided all day, both from those ombudspersons and what they do. And then we also had family members who were not here, family members of inmates, not to complain about the treatment by the corrections officers. In fact, most of them were to be complaining about their treatment by other inmates, but by their inability to get information from somebody until they found me. And so I think the time has come for New York to say, is this the right way to do this? Is there another way to run this railroad? And we'll be taking that up under consideration. In this year's budget, you have requested $3.1 billion, which was up from last year's $2.9 billion, an increase of 8.02%, despite the fact that the prison population went from 53,000 to 51,000. Can you address that?
Well, there are increased costs related to health services, $120 million just alone for medications. We are spending more money to implement the new SHU settlement, which is groundbreaking. There's a lot of rehab that has to be done. There'll be new staff added for that. There are other initiatives related to reentry that are important for the governor, and they make a lot of sense related to upgrading our vocational programming, our thinking for a change. So there's a lot of initiatives there, as well as for the youth initiative with respect to the Hudson Correctional Facility. There are additional staff added there, and a lot for the capital projects that we have to undertake to make that happen.
Thank you for bringing that up. I'd like to address that issue. I, as you well know, have been to 27 prison visits in my capacity as chair of the Corrections Committee, and I have been to Hudson and Coxsackie twice. And so my first question for you is, given the small number of prisoners that you have who are 16 and 17, why are you not putting them all together? So why are you keeping a small cadre of them at Coxsackie and still yet also building a second, not building, renovator, whatever you call that, the Hudson? So are you removing all the adults from the Hudson?
Eventually, yes. Right now, what we implemented was a housing arrangement where 16 and 17-year-olds are either placed at Woodburn, at Greene, or at Coxsackie if they require maximum security placement. Going forward, the plan is for all 16 and 17-year-olds to be removed to Hudson, with the exception of those that still require maximum security placement.
I was at Green when they began the process of the renovation of Green to allow for 16 and 17-year-olds. That was to be in PREA compliance. So why the change? Like, why did you originally come up with the idea we're going to put the medium security PREA compliant units in different places? And then why did you decide now, no, they all have to be in the same place?
This is the next logical step. The governor is really committed to removing 16 and 17-year-olds from adult prisons and more globally, the Raise the Age initiative. We're tied for North Carolina in last place, so to speak. It would be a lot easier for us as a system if every person walking through our door was at least 18 or over. The PREA requirements require us to separate by sight and sound all 16 or 17-year-olds. And to do that effectively, we looked at the existing services at the time, and it made sense to use Woodburn because it had some cells. It made sense to use Green, and it made sense to use Coxsackie for those that would require maximum security placement. Now, this initiative is the next step because it's going to completely remove them from the adult prisons, but Hudson will still remain as a correctional facility. So it is our hope that you do raise the age, because the other thing is this. With any 17-year-old right now in our system, if they come in just 2 months shy of their birthday, they have to go into one of these facilities where we currently cohort them, either Woodburn, Coxsackie, and in the future Hudson. But once they turn 18, we have to immediately uplift them and move them to a general confinement facility. So the Raise the Age initiative will allow the Office of Children and Family Services to hold on to them, to continue in their program, to decide when the appropriate time is to transfer them to us as adults, either at 21 or possibly later. That, I think, is the best possible solution going forward for everyone.
But back to the problem at hand with the segregating out the maximum security prisoners into Coxsackie. As I spoke to you beforehand, when I went there relatively recently, they were one unhappy group of people who, not because they were in prison, but they felt that they were almost in solitary, that they were being punished. And they kept on saying to me and the other people there, why did you do this to us? So what do you intend to do at Hudson to prevent that from being repeated for the medium security 16 and 17-year-olds that you're putting into that facility?
Well, the numbers will be much more significant, and they'll be out and they'll be participating in general confinement program. They'll have free reign in the facility because we don't have to worry about any separation by sight or sound. There'll be no one 18 or over at that facility.
One last question, thank you. When I originally toured Hudson, you were a little upset with me because I went to the crappy dorm, or I went to the one place that was really like crumbling down. It was really decrepit. Are you intending to put those 16 and 17-year-olds into that crappy dorm? I don't know what the word would be, but you know what I'm talking about, right? So, like, literally there were rooms that 8 inmates slept, you know, in beds next to one another in a room that was probably built for 4. Is that where you're putting these kids?
We are upgrading. We're spending a lot of money to upgrade the place to make it suitable for children.
And there will still be adults on the work released
Yes,
side of the prison?
that is outside the secure perimeter. So the temporary release industrial training program will still continue to operate in that building.
Okay, I just want to take an opportunity to thank you for how responsive you have been to me and my staff, and for answering all the letters that I take the time to write. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Assemblyman.
Thank you. Senate?
Thank you very much. Our next speaker is Senator Patrick Gallivan, Chair of Crime and Corrections.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Commissioner, good afternoon.
Good afternoon, Senator.
I can't help but add to the comments of Senator Nozzolio. You have had a very challenging year, and we understand that. I also understand that the Inspector General report is still pending. There's pending investigations related to the escape and looking into it. And I think I'd like you to understand how frustrating it is for us. We've got a responsibility, an oversight responsibility, starting with the Constitution, the various laws, the rules of the Senate. And I'll get into some of the safety and security issues, but when we see overdoses, when we see assaults on staff, when we see assaults on inmates, we see drugs in facilities, and so on. I mean, there's a very real frustration when, as chair of Crime and Corrections Committee, people say, what are you doing about it? And how are you trying to address it? And I've tried to be very respectful of the investigations that are going on, to not impede on any of them. But there will have to come a time when they're out that we'll have to have a more extensive public airing of the events leading up to that. But nonetheless, I hope you understand that handicaps us right at this point, especially when we're considering a package that's spending $3 billion, $3 billion taxpayer dollars. So safety and security, it's evident throughout your testimony, very, very appropriately so. And since my time in this chair and yours in that chair, I know that is something that you've talked about each time that you're before us, and pretty much every time you and I have a conversation. And I want to point to just a couple of different things. I have a letter that you wrote to all the inmates back in April of 2015, which I commend you for. I'm taking a very responsible action while at the same time admitting failures of the system and warning them about the dangers of synthetic marijuana. And we really should rightly be concerned about that. I've got some data regarding contraband in facilities that has continued to increase each of the last 4 years. Last year being the highest total ever. Inmate on staff assaults, same thing, continue to have increased each of the last 3-4 years, highest total ever. Inmate on inmate assault, same thing. So no matter how we look at it, we've got problems and concerns. And it doesn't matter if you are there defending the correction officer or some family member very concerned about their brother, sister, whomever it might be in a correctional facility. Our foremost obligation is to provide for the safety, security, humane constitutional treatment inside those facilities. So of course it begs the question, what are we doing about all this? We're going in the wrong direction each of the last 3 or 4 years. But having said that, I know your testimony started to address that. So the security staffing reviews that we took on 2 years ago, can you tell me where they, and I know you briefly mentioned them, but can you tell me where you are along that process?
We've completed the next, I think it's 18 audits. We've shared that information with the 2 unions, NYSCOBA, Council 82. We're awaiting their feedback, and then we'll send the recommendations, the final set of recommendations, to the Division of the Budget.
When do you anticipate the review of the entire system will be completed, of all the facilities?
The third year will be next year.
And partly in response, I am assuming, to some of the things that have taken place as you're doing your internal review of the escape at Clinton, as well as the security staffing reviews. Your testimony talked about the technological enhancements, training improvements, policy changes. Begun some things, are going to begin some others. It can't come soon enough. I think you agree with that. But how far along are we with these things? And how can we accelerate it so these graphs, which you can't see, but obviously the chart that goes up,
yes,
starts going in the other direction?
Right. The first thing is that we have made arrangements to change our rules, our disciplinary rules, so that K2, or synthetic marijuana, is defined as a drug for purposes of our disciplinary system. That required a formal change in the rule and then serving it on every inmate. So I think the date where it officially will take effect is the next couple of weeks or a few weeks. So that will enhance our ability to discipline appropriately the individuals that engage in that. The next thing that we've done is we've sent out notices to advise the vendors that supply products to our commissaries that we will no longer be able to accept canned goods. There are too many instances where can lids are being used for weaponry. And we talked to other systems. We're one of the few states that's in this area that still does that sort of thing. So we're confident that we can supply other products that are packaged in ways so that ultimately we will be removing can lids from our commissaries, and we will make similar steps, when you buy from secure vendors. So that's the next change. We're going to allow inmates to buy only from secure vendors that we've identified, because this would prevent, assuming no one's compromised by the secure vendors we select, and they will have to prove to us their track record, that purchasing goods from the outside and coming into the facilities, A, will not have can lids, and B, hopefully will no longer have drugs secreted.
If I can just stay right along the commissaries, I know this has been talked about for years. I had a meeting with the Deputy Secretary for Public Safety several months ago, and he talked about an RFP either being prepared or going out for a central commissary,
Yes.
I think. Is that still a plan?
The commissary RFP is still out there, but in the meanwhile, for the existing vendors, we want to implement this now. That will also be part of the long-range RFP for the winning bidder there, but right now, we want to make this change.
All right. Let's, there'll be much more to follow, with all the specific items about trying to prevent contraband from coming into facilities, trying to stop the various assaults on staff or inmates. So I know we'll have many, many more discussions. If I may, just talk very briefly, you talked briefly about it as well in your testimony, inmate discipline, the whole process. I know you had the settlement, you had the shoe lawsuit. Some things were prompted by that. And you've talked about a revamping of an inmate discipline system in your testimony. Some of the concerns that people have come to me with from various facilities across the state is that inmate discipline has gone in the wrong direction, and there's a feeling that that has contributed to the increase in assaults, be it on inmates or staff. Can you comment on that?
We continue to study and meet with our unions to get feedback. Certainly, as we know, and we spoke about this maybe a year ago, 2 years ago, the demographics of our population have changed. Many years ago, we had 24,000 drug offenders, mostly low-level drug offenders. And now, disproportionately, we have more violent felony offenders in our system. I think maybe 64%. We have 9,500, 600 inmates that are serving sentences with maximums of life terms. So those are changing demographics. That may be one of the reasons that we're seeing the uptick in assaults. No assault is good. The majority of assaults that do happen, and as I explained, our definition of what constitutes an assault is much lower than what's in the penal law. It does not require physical injury. If I throw this cup of water, I won't cause you injury, but it's an assault.
No, I understand that, and just if I may, sorry to interrupt, we can call it anything, but there should never be a time that an inmate puts his hand on another inmate, or an inmate puts his hands on a correction officer. So I appreciate the semantics of it, but I think we're on the same page with that. It's the order within a facility that's of concern.
And I think moving to the reforms that we've implemented or are planning to implement with the changes, we see that as very analogous to what we've done with the seriously mentally ill. And we planned that out, we spent the right amount of money, we developed programs like the RMHU at Marcy, the one at 5 Points, where we can safely bring inmates who are otherwise very problematic out of their cells to receive programming and treatment using secure restart chairs. So we envision that this will help safety, because we're going to do the step-down program at one of our facilities, a couple of others step down to the communities. We're going to change. We have this elaborate CCP program that we're planning. We have a whole array of options similar to what we did with the seriously mentally ill. And I think staff, for the most part, unless I'm wrong, will tell you that they see what we've done with the seriously mentally ill and those programs at Marcy as working. And we're effectively changing behavior, which is our ultimate goal. We want to change behavior by difficult inmates. We see that going the same way ultimately, and it'll take some time. We have to be patient. But when we bring everything online, we think we'll have a safer system for everybody.
All right, Commissioner, thank you. I would love to go on, but the chair is going to turn my microphone off because my time's up. Thank you very much.